What's up, guys? It's finally here, the day we've all been waiting for. NCAA Tournament Round 1, Thursday, March 21st. The Wednesday games haven't finished, so unfortunately we can't recap those games at the time of recording. We have a full slate of NCAA Tournament games today with a whole bunch of value. Let's get into it. Smash the thumbs up button if you want to see our picks every day, and subscribe to the channel. Even with over 100 new subscribers yesterday, almost 80% of viewers aren't subscribed. It's 100% free and can keep you from missing these picks. Our videos are sponsored by StumpTheSpread.com. Click the link in the description to go over there and join our free email list and check out our top confidence plays on all the major sports. Stump the Spread is sponsoring a bracket challenge on ESPN. The link is located in the description of this video and in the free picks tab at StumpTheSpread.com. We are giving away $150 in total prizes, so get in there before you run out of time. Comment below with your bets today and anything else you want to say about these picks, these videos, or anything you see here. Give us your best NCAA tournament predictions. I respond to every single comment and I'll give you my best advice on your picks to help us all cash some bets. Now let's dive into our first game of the day, Michigan State versus Mississippi State in the Western region. Michigan State somehow managed to find their way into the NCAA tournament despite not having the best year overall. They finished things up only 19-14. They went only 10-10 in Big Ten play. It seems pretty clear that Tom Izzo is getting a lot of respect from the NCAA committee. This team has been decent, but down the stretch they didn't really do anything to impress me to the point where I would have thought they were guaranteed to be in this field, but they're in here nonetheless. They made it in with a relatively decent seed, so good for them, I guess. The Spartans are a fairly decent offensive team. Nothing amazing though. They do have a great leading scorer in Tyson Walker. He's putting up nearly 20 points per game, shooting around 45% from the field. AJ Hoggard is maybe a better overall player with his 11 points and 5.5 assists per game. Those are very solid numbers. That's something that you can definitely hang your hat on. If you got somebody like that running your offense, you know things are going to go relatively smoothly. That's one of the reasons that the Spartans are averaging assist numbers that have them in the top 40 in the entire nation. This team is not very good on the board though. That's something of a concern. And their defense though, when it comes to their defense, they are fantastic. They're a very strong defensive team. They're no Virginia. They actually can play on the other end of the court, so we're not going to be in for a travesty like we saw the other night. The Spartans come into this game fresh off of a loss to Purdue. They kept things pretty close. They only lost that game by 5 points, so that's pretty encouraging. Before that, they knocked off Minnesota, but before that, they lost to Iowa by 1 point. They played a very close game against Northwestern that they won by 5. I'm not going to say they come into this game really struggling, but they're not exactly flying high. They're taking on a Mississippi State squad that finished in the bottom half of the SEC. This is another team that kind of feels like they snuck in here. They snuck into the NCAA tournament. Maybe they edged out some slightly more deserving teams. We saw Mississippi State take down LSU and Tennessee before eventually falling to Auburn, and not exactly a blowout, but not a game that really felt like it was ever going to be something that Mississippi State was going to win. Josh Hubbard leads the way for the Bulldogs here. He's putting up nearly 18 points per game, but he's only shooting 38% from the field. Not exactly fantastic numbers. This team doesn't really have a fantastic point guard. They don't average a ton of assists, and they're really just not a very good shooting team overall. That's a big concern from them. They're going to have to hit the heater of a lifetime for these guys if they're going to make some sort of run here in the NCAA tournament. Their rebounding though is very good. That's the concern in this game. It's can they just like dominate Michigan State on the boards? That'll be very interesting. We'll see how things develop with that. Their defense isn't great though. They're not a very good defensive team. They did just get kind of slaughtered by Auburn. They did miraculously dominate Tennessee defensively. That was very weird. Definitely seemed like a choke job by Tennessee more than a great game by Mississippi State. The Bulldogs lost 4 of their last 6 overall headed into this game, headed into the NCAA tournament. That's not exactly where you want to be at. We're looking at Michigan State. They're 18-14-1 against the spread overall this season. Mississippi State's not terrible against the spread, but they're not great. It's not really a meaningful trend from them. We're going to go with Michigan State and the Tom Izzo effect in this one. They usually do well in their opening round of the tournament, so give me Michigan State -1.5 in this one. I think the Spartans find a way to get a job done against a team that really just can't shoot the ball. Next up, we've got another early game. We're looking at Duquesne going up against BYU. The Duquesne Dukes went on an absolutely insane run through the A10 conference tournament. They won their last 8 games in a row coming into this one. They're playing their absolute best ball of the season. They're just peaking at the perfect time. They took down Dayton, SBU, and VCU, all in pretty convincing fashion. This team suddenly just seems much better on defense. Their offense hasn't been fantastic all season long, but that's not a huge concern. This team really hangs their hat on defense. They defend the 3-point line really well. They crash the boards relatively well. They're not an insanely good rebounding team, but against VCU, their last time out, they absolutely dominated the boards. This team has really just turned around everything for themselves here in the end of the season. They're just playing great. Day Grant is a monster. Jimmy Clark is a very good point guard. This team has has some good players in skill positions that are really putting up numbers. They're just playing great. There's no way around it. This team is red hot coming to this game. We could be a little bit worried about fatigue, but with these young players, I'm not too hung up on that. They're taking on one of the more exciting, maybe it depends on how you want to look at it, teams from the Big 12. They're taking on BYU in this one. The Cougars lost in their conference tournament to Texas Tech in an absolute blowout. The Cougars have been an elite offensive team all season long. They're scoring 81, almost 82 points per game, but most of those points are coming from long range. This is a team that really likes to shoot it from deep. They don't have one major leading scorer. I guess you could count Jackson Robinson as their major leading scorer, but he's only scoring 14 points per game. Like, that's nothing insane. He's only shooting 42% from the field. This team can really move the ball. Dallin Hall is a very solid point guard. They really depend a lot on the three-point shot. This team can also defend some, but not amazing. Their rebounding numbers are very good, but that has a lot to do with their pace of play. They play at a very high pace. They're looking to get shots up. They're getting out in transition where they can, but really it all comes down to whether or not they're making their shots on that given night. BYU has been very good against the spread this season, going 20 and 13 against the spread overall, but when they're playing away from home, and that's something I think we can kind of like draw parallels to when they're playing in the NCAA tournament, they're not going to be shooting on home rims. They're only 3 and 7 against the spread overall and playing on the road. That is a big concern for me in this one. We're going to take Duquesne plus 10.5. That's a lot of points. Duquesne's strength, which is defending the three-point line, matches up well against BYU's strength, which is shooting threes. I think we see Duquesne keep this game very close. You can even sprinkle that money line if you want to. They're going to find a way to make this a tough game. Next up, we're going to look at a 15 versus a 2 matchup. We've got Long Beach State going against Arizona. Long Beach State came out of the middle of the Big West to win their conference tournament and get their automatic bid. This has been a very interesting team down the stretch this season. They really just caught fire in the conference tournament. They weren't necessarily playing well coming into tournament play, but they got the wins. They did what they needed to do to find their way into the field. This team is a high pace, high octane offense. They don't play much defense, but they can really score the ball. They're averaging almost 80 points per game, which is very respectable. They've got star scoring talent. They got Marcus Jonas putting up nearly 18 points per game, shooting around 40% from the field. They can rebound the ball well. Those numbers are inflated because of their heavy pace of play. They're very quick to get up and down the court, very quick to fire those shots off, but that's not a bad thing when you're a lower seed in the tournament trying to knock off a monster. This team has relatively good ball movement. They can move the ball around. They might struggle against the length and athleticism of Arizona. They might not do very well on the boards, but that's going to be interesting to see. If you've got lots of long rebounds, you can definitely get some rebounds that you would not normally get against taller opponents. Arizona comes into this game with a lot of pressure. They choked last season in the NCAA tournament. They've not had very much success in the NCAA tournament overall. They've struggled with some poor play against some lower seeds, so that's a pretty big concern. Could they possibly do this again? It's going to be very interesting to see. The Wildcats did struggle down the stretch this season. They lost 2 of their last 3 games despite them being twice against USC and then once against Oregon. They pretty much got worked by Oregon there in the Pac-12 tournament, which is a little bit embarrassing. This team has been putting up cartoon numbers all season long. There's no way around it. They're top 5, top 10 in almost every major statistical category. They score a crap ton of points. They rebound the ball really well. If you watch this team play, they're so huge out there on the court and they move so well. It's like ridiculous. You would think they would be much more dominant, but it seems like they're a team that gets inside their own heads. We've got Long Beach State getting 20.5 points in this one. Guys, this might sound crazy, but we're taking Long Beach State and the points. I don't think you need to worry about sprinkling the money line. I don't think there's a way they win this game straight up. I do think you could kind of help yourself out a little bit and go with Long Beach State plus around 11 or 11.5, whatever you can find out there in the first half. Betting on them in the first half could dodge Arizona figuring stuff out and getting back on track in the second half of the game, which I think is what will happen. I think Arizona will come out. They'll be a little bit tight and Long Beach State will take advantage, but then the beach will fade a little bit down the stretch and we'll see Arizona take over in the second half. I don't know if it's going to be enough to win this game by more than 20 points though, so give me Long Beach State plus 11.5 in the first half and plus 20.5 overall. Next up, we're looking at Morehead State going up against Illinois. Morehead State finished their season off strong. They took down the conference title in the OVC. They were peaking at the right time. They won 6 straight games. They knocked off the second best team in their conference. They really played through everybody they needed to play through to prove that they were the best team out there. This squad can put up some points. They're very good on the boards, which is only slightly a symptom of them playing at a higher pace. Their defense is very good. This is just a solid team. Riley Minks is a monster. He's scoring 20 points per game, shooting nearly 55% from the field. This guy can really fill it up. Drew Thuwell is a very solid point guard. This team has pieces. They've got players up and down the roster. They might not be the most athletic, but they can sure score the ball. They're crashing the boards well, which is a good sign, and they seem committed on the defensive end. You don't always see that from the high-octane offensive teams, but they are really getting after it on that end of the floor. Another interesting factor about this team is Morehead State is 19-11 against the spread overall this season. That's pretty interesting as they're going up against an Illinois team who is riding very high, coming off a conference tournament win in the Big Ten. Coming out on top in a major power conference is no small feat. They've done this behind the stellar play of Terrence Shannon Jr. and Marcus Damask. This is a very stellar tandem of two players who really work well together. This team doesn't get a crazy amount of assist numbers. They play at a very high pace though. They put up a lot of offense. They do get some rebounds, but I think at least some of that has to be chalked up to the fact that they play at such a crazy pace. Their defense is pretty good, but not absolutely insane. They did just give up 87 points to Wisconsin. The game before that, they gave 87 points to Nebraska. This squad doesn't really defend well. They just don't seem too committed on that end of the floor, and I mean, why would you be when you can outscore everyone you take on? Illinois is a solid 18-3-3 against the spread overall this season. That's a very good number, but they're minus 12 in this game, and you have to worry a little bit about them being exhausted coming off of that conference tournament slog. They really went nuts winning their conference tournament championship, which is great, but teams that have done that don't tend to look so good in the opening round. We're going to take Morehead State plus 12 in this one against a team that doesn't play very much defense. I think we will see Illinois win this game. I wouldn't necessarily sprinkle the money line, even though we've seen Illinois struggle historically in the NCAA tournament. Go ahead and give me Morehead State, just plus 12 in this one. You can sprinkle the money line if you're really feeling it, but I will not be doing that. Next up, we're looking at one of my favorite games on the slate. We've got South Dakota State taking on Iowa State. South Dakota State came out on top in the Summit Conference, which makes sense to me. They dominated in there most of the season, finishing with a 12-4 conference record. They went 22-12 overall. This team doesn't really wow you when you look at their statistics, though. They only are scoring around 77 points per game. Not terrible, but not amazing. Their rebound numbers are kind of middle of the road, and their defensive numbers just aren't very good. Sure, Zeke Mayo is a very solid scoring option. He's putting up almost 19 points per game. He's dishing out almost 4 assists, but he's averaging 3 turnovers per game, so that's not exactly something we're going to throw him a parade about. This team has been dominant in their conference schedule. They come into this game playing pretty well. They've won their last 7 in a row, but when you look at the level of their competition, it's not exactly fantastic. In their step-up games, we saw them get absolutely destroyed by Kansas State. They lost to Akron. They lost to UCF. They lost to George Mason. Those are not exactly amazing showings when they're playing against upper-level competition. They lost to Kent State. They lost to Wyoming. This just isn't a team or really a conference that's ready to run with the big dogs. They're going to have to really turn things on here if they want to keep things close against Iowa State, one of the best teams in the nation. They came out on top in the Big 12, absolutely dominating against Houston. Don't have to worry about them being too tired in this one because they washed Houston. They won that game 69-41. Absolutely insane performance from Iowa State. The Cyclones pushed Houston earlier in the season but took the loss, but they found a way to get the job done in the conference tournament. This team's numbers don't exactly jump off the paper, but they play amazingly hard on the defensive end. They put up plenty of offensive numbers. They move the ball really well. That's a great sign for a team that's going to, if you're going to concentrate on defense a little bit more, if you can move the ball really well, you have a good offensive system, you can come up with some pretty easy buckets. They rebound the ball competitively. They can really shoot the ball from deep. They shot the absolute lights out in their win over Baylor, for example. This team is just good up and down the roster. They've got tons of talent, and an interesting thing to look at is their against the spread numbers for the season overall. They are a staggering 23-10-1 against the spread overall. South Dakota is 16-14-1 against the spread, so not exactly on the same level. We're going to take Iowa State minus 16 in this one. I don't think South Dakota State is going to score very many points in this game at all, guys. I think this is going to be a blowout. If Iowa State can beat somebody like Houston in a blowout, they can definitely blow out lowly South Dakota State. Give me the Iowa State Cyclones. They're going to get a massive win and cover in this one. They're great against mid-major teams, and yeah, South Dakota State, sorry guys, you're just not on this level. Next up, we're looking at one of the later games in the day. We've got Sanford going up against Kansas. This is one of the trendiest games right now. Everybody's looking at this one because Kansas is going to be without their leading scorer. Sanford comes into this game. They're playing some of their best ball this season. They've won 4 straight. They knocked off ETSU in the conference tournament to make it into the big dance here. Let's look at this team that they beat, ETSU, Eastern Tennessee State. They're 8-10 in the Southern, and they're 19-16 overall. This is not stellar competition. These are not good teams that we've seen Sanford going up against all season, let's look back at some step-up games that Sanford played. Now, they got beaten by 53 points by Purdue, they lost to VCU, and those are really the only notable non-conference games that this team played. They're not battle-tested against good opponents. Sure, they can score the ball, but they're scoring the ball against teams like Chattanooga and Wofford and Furman and East Tennessee State. This is not actually a good team. They don't really have any star power. They don't rebound the ball particularly well, which is a big concern. If you can't rebound in the Southern Conference, are you really going to be able to rebound against a Kansas team? I don't think so. This squad plays some defense, but are they going to be able to defend against these absolute monsters that are going to be facing them? Guys, I don't really see it in this one. We're looking at Kansas. They're going to be without Kevin McCullough Jr. We all know that. It's been one of the most talked about things heading into this NCAA tournament. I don't think that's going to matter too much in this game. Kansas has been resting. They've been getting people ready for this game. We know that Hunter Dickinson is going to be back for this one, so that's definitely going to be a boost for them. They're getting a little bit healthier. Sure, they're not going to have their main scorer back. I know. But Kansas is a squad that's full of the best athletes in the nation that have been waiting in the wings for an opportunity like this. They are not going to get bounced here in the first round. This team can rebound the ball. They rebounded the ball well in the freaking Big 12. They've got great ball movement. I know some of that is from McCullough Jr., but most of it's from Duan Harris Jr., and he is gonna go off in this game. I'll be very shocked if he doesn't. They're gonna have all the size, they're gonna have all the athleticism on their team. Everybody's on Sanford in this one. Guys, I am not. We are taking Kansas -7 in this one. It's probably my second favorite play of the day on this game. We're going against the trends. I think that's a good place to be. Give me Kansas to get the win and cover. Last on this slate, but not last in my heart, we're looking at the Drake Bulldogs going up against Washington State. Drake comes into this game. They were the winners of the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. They knocked off Indiana State 84-80. Pretty insane run by the Bulldogs in the conference tournament. They won their last 5 games in a row. They really started peaking at the right time. This is a team that absolutely shoots the lights out. They're very good at just filling it up from deep. Tucker DeVries is a monster shooting the ball. They kind of run their whole offense around him, or maybe he kind of runs the whole offense around himself. He's their leading scorer and leading assist man. He's shooting 45% from the field, which is pretty good for somebody that takes that kind of volume from three-point range. This squad can struggle a little bit on the boards, but they play pretty good defense, which is one of the hallmarks of the Missouri Valley Conference. They really score the ball, guys. They're putting up 80.5 points per game. That puts you among the elite teams in the nation. Should we be a little bit worried about the fact they're going to be playing away from home? Sure, but they've actually been good away from home. They haven't been too bothered shooting the ball on the road. This game is basically going to be a home game for Drake. Also, Drake is 9-6 against the spread at home. Where this game is located, look where Drake's at on the map. This is pretty close together, and their fans are known to travel pretty well. They're taking on a Washington State team who finished off their season kind of up and down. They lost to Washington, then beat Stanford, then lost in a close one to Colorado, 58-52. Not a very exciting offensive performance from this team. Isaac Jones is a monster. He's scoring almost 16 points per game, shooting almost 60% from the field. Miles Rice is another monster, but this team isn't exactly amazing on the boards. I do expect them to win the battle of the boards against Drake, but that's only if Drake misses some shots. The Cougars pretty much hang their hats on defense, and that could be a problem here. It'll be interesting to see how the officiating is going in the NCAA tournament, whether they're going to be letting them play or whether they're going to be calling it fairly tight. Washington is only 17-16 against the spread overall this season, and 5-5 against the spread when playing on the road. Those aren't exactly numbers that fill me with a ton of confidence. We're going to take Drake -1.5 in this one. They're basically playing this game at home. They're going to be in front of the home fans. I think Tucker DeVries and company find a way to get the job done. That's all the games we're going to go over for today, guys. Hit that like button for good luck on all your bets today, and subscribe if you're new. Let me know in the comments any questions you have on today's slate. Thanks for watching. You can click the link in the description to check out StumpTheSpread.com and to sign out for our bracket challenge. See you guys tomorrow for more NCAA basketball action.